Hello there, level uppers. This is David, aka Namor84, and I am here with a mini-series about the real-life origins of boss characters in games. For this first episode, I decided to research Castlevania Symphony and Night bosses. The game itself has quite a bit of bosses, and a lot of them are pretty original, but some are taken directly from folklore and myth. I'm not going to talk about all the bosses. A lot of them I couldn't find real-life counterparts for. But I did manage to narrow it down to 9 of the most interesting and intricate ones. Shall we begin? The first boss that I'm going to talk about is Granfalloon. Now, as far as Granfalloon is concerned, it comes from the fictional religion of Bokononism in Kurt Vonnegut's 1963 novel Cat's Cradle. You're probably wondering why in this game it's called Granfalloon and not Legion like it is in subsequent games afterwards. Well, for one, bad translation, but what is interesting to ponder is why the localization team for the game didn't stick with Legion as it was in the Japanese version. In case you haven't googled it yet, a Granfalloon is defined as a false charis, meaning it is a group of people who have shared identity or purpose, but their mutual association is meaningless. I guess the localization guys saw a throbbing ball of nude people wrapped around a demon and thought it was basically the same thing. Go figure, right? The next boss I want to talk about is the Doppelganger. If you're like me, you were introduced to the word Doppelganger through Spider-Man with his Doppelganger. However, not many people have, so it's a German word literally translated to double walker and kind of has its unholy supernatural origin. The word Doppelganger has been around not that long, first appearing in the English lexicon around 1851 after recently giving birth in the German language. The concept, however, is much older and has roots in ancient Egyptian myth where Ka was a tangible spirit double having the same memories and feelings as the person to whom the counterpart belongs. In the Egyptian myth, the Greek princess, Ka of Helen of Troy, was used to mislead Paris of Troy, helping to stop the war. In Norse myth, a Vardagur is a ghostly double who precedes a living person and is seen performing their actions in advance. In some myths, the doppelganger is a version of the Anku, a Britain personification of death. Alright, and we're on to Cerberus. Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guards Hades. Somehow made its way into Dracula's castle, but I guess if you have the personification of death as your second in command, Cerberus wouldn't be that hard to obtain. Cerberus is the offspring of Echidna, a hybrid half-woman, half-serpent, and Typhon, a gigantic monster the Greek gods feared. Other wonderful family members include its siblings, the Lernaean Hydra, Orthrus, a two-headed hellhound, and the Chimera, a three-headed monster. Seeing a pattern here? The most common depiction of Cerberus is it having three heads, each representing the past, present, and future. It is said that each head has an appetite for live meat and thus only allows spirits of the dead to freely enter the underworld, but doesn't let anyone leave. Now, this next boss was a little tricky for me to find because the name Karasuman isn't really related to anything except for the fact that in later games it's called Malphas. As far as its entry into the Castlevania bestiary in Symphony of the Night, he's called the Lord of Ravens, so it was a little easier to find him under Malphas. Malphas, as it is later and rightly known, is, and I quote, a mighty great president of hell, having 40 legions of demons under his command. According to my sources, he accepts any kind of sacrifice or tribute, but will deceive the conjurer. None of that sounds like the Lord of Ravens as the game briefly describes. However, according to demonology, he is depicted as a crow that after a while changes shape into a man. He also rises from the vanity of mankind. His corruption plagues those he touches, and renders the conjurer mentally insane in forms of madness, dementia, and etc. Sounds like a great guy for parties. Now, at first, I wasn't going to choose Medusa because everyone knows pretty much the important parts, the snake hair, the stone glare, and blah blah blah. But there are some things I'm sure I can bring to light to make the staple of the franchise seem less boring. Now, she is one of the three Gorgon sisters and the only one who is mortal. Also, she is the daughter of Phorcys and Cato. She was beheaded by Perseus, and at the time she was pregnant by Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea. After being beheaded, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a golden sword wielding giant, sprang from her body. Well, I guess it sucks to be Medusa. Alright, the next monster I want to talk about is Scylla. Scylla was the monster that lived on one side of the narrow channel of water opposite its counterpart Charybdis. The two sides of the strait were within an arrow's range of each other, so close that sailors attempting to avoid Charybdis would pass too close to Scylla and vice versa. The strait itself has been associated with the Strait of Messina between Italy and Sicily. Some accounts has Scylla as the child of Phorcys and Cato. Others has her parents as Triton and Lamia. According to one account, Scylla was a beautiful naiad who was claimed by Poseidon, but the jealous Amphitrite turned her into a monster by poisoning the water of the spring where Scylla would bathe. She was even killed by Hercules and brought back to life by the flaming torches. Not sure why he brought her back to life, but hey, Greek and all, right? Alright, the next boss here that I want to talk about is the Minotaur, and if you haven't noticed so far, there seems to be a lot of Greek influence in this game as far as monsters and bosses are concerned. Um, I'd just like to point out that due to the time period that this game was set in, it was during like the classical era, and at the time people had a big obsession with ancient Greek stuff, so it's not really uncommon for the time period that it's set in. But moving on, the Minotaur, the monster that we're going to talk about right now, was a half man, half bull with some interesting backstory. It all starts with King Minos ascending the throne in Crete. He competed with his brothers to get the position, but one day he prays to Poseidon to send a snow white bull for support. He was to kill the bull to show honor to Poseidon, but decided to keep it because of how beautiful it was. Thinking Poseidon wouldn't care, he sacrificed another bull in its place. Now, for some reason, Aphrodite punishes Minos by making his wife fall in love with the bull known as the Cretan bull at this time. Minos' wife, Pasiphae, had Daedalus make a hollow wooden cow, and she climbed inside to get her hump on with the Cretan bull. That's how the Minotaur was conceived, and Minos had Daedalus build a labyrinth to hold the monster and was eventually killed by Theseus. Sucks to be him. Alright, now we're moving on to the Hippogriff, which is a legendary creature which resembles a winged horse with the head and upper body of an eagle. The first recorded mention of a hippogriff was made by the Latin poet Virgil. Though sometimes depicted during the classical era and during the rule of Merovingians, it was first named and defined by Ludovico Ariosto in his Orlando Furioso at the beginning of the 16th century. Within the poem, the hippogriff is a steed born of a mare and a griffin. It is extremely fast and is presented as being able to fly around the world and to the moon. It is ridden by magicians and wandering knight Roger, who, from the creature's back, frees the beautiful Angelica. Hippo is ancient Greek for horse, and griff refers to its parentage from the other mythical creature, the griffin. So this is a true bastard child. Alright, lastly we do have Beelzebub. The name Beelzebub comes from the Old Testament where the name roughly translates to Lord of the Flies, or Lord of the Heavenly Dwelling. It was originally the name given to the Philistine god Baal. Beelzebub is commonly described as placed high in Hell's hierarchy. According to the stories of the 16th century occultist Johann Weyer, Beelzebub led a successful revolt against the devil, is the chief lieutenant of Lucifer, the emperor of Hell, and presides over the Order of the Fly. 7th century exorcist Sebastian Michaelis, in his Admiral History, placed Beelzebub among the three most prominent fallen angels, the other two being Lucifer and Leviathan, whereas two 18th century works identified an unholy trinity consisting of Beelzebub, Lucifer, and Astaroth. John Milton featured Beelzebub seemingly as the second ranking of the many fallen cherubim in the epic poem Paradise Lost, first published in 1667. Well, my fellow level uppers, there you have it, my first Origins video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and found it informative. Also, check out other vids here at Level Up Gaming. Thomas Enigma is currently doing a Let's Play of Mega Man 7. Now, I do appreciate feedback and criticism, so if you would go ahead and let me have that in the comments below, that would be great. Alright, until next time, Level Uppers.